Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've had your stiff cup of coffee to keep you from falling asleep. It's going to be a battle, but we shall attempt to keep you awake. We're going to be talking about, as was introduced, synthetic truth when perception kills. I'll just tell you what this will be covering. This will be covering how fake news spreads and is shared using technology, using non-state actors, using those who want to create fissures of friction between governments, its citizens, its institutions. We're going to start off by asking, is that division really that clear in today's day and age? But before that, I will just introduce my panel. You can read up on their longer achievements in the booklets you have, so that not to waste time in giving you their past history, which is significant and they're very accomplished. I'll give you the quick intro. Jency Jacob is managing editor of Boom. Mercy Abang is a journalist at Al Jazeera and NewsWire, and she has also been with the United Nations, so she'll get that perspective in as well. Hi, Mercy. And Rema Rajeshwari is a district police chief, Mahboobnagar, Telangana, who will make sure that we behave ourselves. So there's plenty of bad news to go around as far as fake news and how digital platforms and social media is used to create friction and problem and riots between citizens, establishment, governments. But we were just discussing outside, at least in one place in my experience, and I thought I'd come to Rema for that. At least as far as the police is concerned, I personally find that we'll talk about the downside, but is it not true? For me, it's the only institution where it has built some trust, because I know you're not from Delhi, but when I was growing up in Delhi, I'll just give you just indulge me a little bit, I'll give you a little anecdote, which is actually a Jat joke, but because most Delhi police was Jat, even as a college student, even if you'd done nothing wrong and you wanted some help of a cop, and you said, Bhai sahab, thodi takleef deni thi, he'd say, dekhe to dikha. So you just stayed away from cops. Now you tweet to the cop, in trouble, and you get an immediate response. So we'll discuss all the bad news, but is your arm the only arm that has brought the citizen and the establishment closer together?
You want me to start? Yeah. Thank you, Abhinandan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give a very small background about the kind of work that we've been doing since last 2 years. Personally, a major part of my work since the summer of 2018 has been to figure out ways to protect the institutional integrity and a healthy citizen-police relationship, especially in the wake of a sustained online digital propaganda, which is being witnessed these days. In March last year, when we faced an absolutely new law enforcement challenge in the form of social media-fueled mob lynching, we had no choice but to come up with local antidotes in the form of local solutions to a global problem. Well, we did manage to protect people from getting lynch mobbed and convince the local communities to learn to self-regulate themselves, especially on social media. We fought really hard and for a very long time, and there was a point in time when everything stopped. There were no more rumors about organ harvesting gangs or child lifting gangs. So we took a deep breath and we went about our routine policing activities. But on 29th July, barely 10 days ago, I was shocked to read about a news which came from the state of West Bengal about a man mob lynched in the Tasati tea gardens of Aliparduar district in the state of West Bengal. 250 men had beaten the man on the suspicion of being a child lifter. Right after this incident, there were numerous reports that these social media rumors, which fueled large-scale violence last year, are back in the social media platforms, back in the digital space, leading to multiple incidents of violence in various parts of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can recollect, around the same time last year, there was a hue and cry about platform accountability, and about taking down malicious content from the social media space, which has the potential to incite violence. And right after the news space was full of reports of mob lynching incidents and how the platforms are not doing enough to control the issue, the government jumped in and intermediary draft guidelines were drafted, and the Supreme Court of India issued guidelines about the preventive and remedial measures to control this issue. And states like Manipur, they enacted legislation on mob lynching. We started focusing on what was happening on ground. What was happening on ground because of the social media rumors which were being spread across different platforms. But the rumors, as I've just mentioned, they are back, and so is the narrative, which was rightly pointed out by the moderator, to instill fear among common citizens and to create a kind of mass hysteria. The perception that the others are dangerous, the otherness. I was just listening to a panel just before our panel on Rohingyas, and the core issue behind the whole issue is that, like, how in a post-colonial setup these seeds of hatred were planted, because we were already so used to that divide and rule policy. And so we kind of inherited that policy, and that kind of gets reflected in the way people were being administered, not just in India, but also in many countries which are part of South Asia. Just a few days ago, I'm sure you must have read the news reports about the mass shootings that happened in the United States of America. The El Paso shooter specifically referenced to this Christchurch incident, and he appears to have been inspired by the largely unmoderated discussions. I would like to repeat, the largely unmoderated discussions that happened on the social media platform called 8chan, which glorified the massacre, the Christchurch massacre. So after getting inspired, by this, he watched a number of videos, and then he went about killing people in that Walmart in El Paso. And there were numerous social media posts right after the incident, not expressing sympathy, but how some of them get really inspired by these videos, because some feel that they have a right to take up arms and they have a right to exterminate people. Please be mindful of certain words that we are using. And these are incidents which give us this hard realization that sometimes, we have to take a moment and realize that, history repeats itself. Like how social media has been hijacked by antisocial elements or extremists or people with a vested agenda to create that rift in the society and like pit people and make them kill each other. So the tragedies of El Paso or Christchurch or the Easter bombing in Sri Lanka or other places which we have seen in the last 2 years, these incidents highlight the connection between offline harm and online hatred. Now, figuring out solutions for online hate is not as easy as we thought. Maybe we thought that there is an easy fix, but there isn't. So with these words, I'd like to stop here, because during the course of the discussion, I would like to talk more about the solutions, like how, when we faced a challenge like this, when social media, the faceless enemy, was the criminal we were chasing after, how difficult it was and how difficult it is even today. It's been almost a year and a half, and even today we are battling with the same issue of, how to contain these social media rumors from being spread further, or, pushing people to kill each other. We have no idea. And there have been numerous instances of, multiple roundtable discussions, governments taking a stand, some of the state governments making announcements that, yes, there will be some sort of accountability on the part of the social media platforms, and there will be more engagement with the citizens, and there will be large-scale efforts on the part of the government to educate people, particularly on digital literacy. But my personal issue is that, the pace has been pretty slow, and it will be too late before we wake up and realize that, this is the biggest law enforcement challenge that we have right now. In India, we don't have the issue of mass shootings, but yes, at a much deeper level, at the ground level where I work, we deal with this on a day-to-day basis. This is like a daily issue for us. Somebody puts up a picture about somebody, they incite, these messages incite communal violence, and within a fraction of 10 minutes, the whole community gathers, and there is a huge law and order situation. And we know how to control the mob, but we don't know how to take down these messages which are spreading to other areas. And by the time we realize, and by the time we gather our forces and resources, it's too late for us. So with these, I would like to stop, and yeah.
Yeah, we'll come to that, and I mean, is there an inevitability to it? But before that, the way the problem has been framed in this text, I'll just read this out. The panel will examine the phenomena of fake news and misinformation as a trigger for violence, etc. And extremist groups creating false truth to discredit regimes and to breach the trust between citizens and governments. And it talks about institutions. Now, have we also now got to realize that, and this is to you, Mercy, the distinction between what is an insurgent ideology or group and what is the government and what is the citizen and who is trying to create a rift with who. For example, let me take a neutral example since we're in India. I'll take the example of the US. The US president has gone hammer and tongs trying to discredit the news media as a whole. That's an institution. In fact, he has also tried to discredit various courts of law that have ruled against some of his decisions. So, and he often uses white nationalists. He's retweeted people who are known white nationalists. And this is happening the world over. I will not give you specific examples in this country, although there are. What is the insurgent ideology? What is government and what is citizen? Is that all one big continuum now?
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. I'll start from my country. I'm Nigerian, and we're also dealing with insurgency. And I'm talking about terrorists, Boko Haram, for those that are familiar with Boko Haram in the house. I think state actors take extremists for this purpose. Now, the real insurgents or the terrorists, as you may want to describe them, take advantage of the fault lines. And those people that use messaging that sort of appeal to our various sentiments as citizens, as people from the political elite. You just made mention of President Donald Trump, are the state actors. I've had cases where I did a report in northern Nigeria where a man said 3 of his boys were killed by the Nigerian military. And they were extrajudicially killed because when Boko Haram bombed a street, what they normally do is they just sort of raid the entire street and just pick all the young men there as suspects. And his kids just got back from school that day and they picked them up, 3 boys. One was 15, the other was 18, I think the other was about 12. And he kept saying, my children are not terrorists, why are you taking them to the barracks? And these boys were detained and they died one after the other. They suffocated and died. And some of the questions he was asking me when I was interviewing him of sort, he was saying, Mercy, should I stick to the Nigerian military or to Boko Haram? So when you talk about extremism, we have victims that have gone through this phase of abuse by the state. And the situation forces them to take sides. And when they take sides, we start questioning who's at fault. Clearly, the state was at fault in this situation because his 3 children were extrajudicially killed. Nobody has talked to him. Nobody has compensated him. Nobody has called him up. And he would say, Boko Haram would ask you, possibly make sure you pray 5 times per day. If you're a woman, you cover up properly, you pay your tax, and that's it. But the military just came in, raided, and picked up my children. That's on one hand. Then on the other hand, we've had cases where the state itself, I'm not here to criticize so much about the state, but I'm saying that Insurgents are bad. They're terribly bad. Boko Haram has killed more than 27,000 people for the last 10 years of its existence, and they've displaced 2 million Nigerians, and they've taken over the entire Lake Chad region. That's a disaster. That's a crisis, right? But they've taken advantage of the fault lines of the state. When Boko Haram started, they moved from one street to another, and they ensured that young people that had gone to school, that were unemployed, submitted their certificate. And they said Western education was a disaster. And why did they say that? Because these young people were not having jobs. The Nigerian state did not employ them, they were done with school, but they couldn't get jobs. And Boko Haram said, well, you went to school, but you can't get jobs. We can offer you loan facilities. If you're a young man, we can allow you get married. We always help you with the resources you need to get married. We're going to give you loan, and these loans are interest-free loans. For those that are familiar with the Islamic banking system methods, the Islamic bank, you don't pay interest when you take loans. And Boko Haram understands this system, and they take advantage of the economic fault lines of the Nigerian system.
But how much of it is tech and fake news related? Do they use
Absolutely.
tech and fake news? Like,
I mean,
what? Give me some examples. What do they do? What's the
Boko
kind of
Haram
stuff
is very big on WhatsApp. They're very big on Facebook as well. So
they have a Facebook page?
So they don't come out to, Facebook is shutting down most of them lately, but they found a way to take advantage of civilian population that is a little bit sympathetic to them, right? You don't just go out on Facebook and type, I'm a Boko Haram. I mean, who will let you into the space? But clearly, the same way they've been able to take control of most states in Nigeria is because they have civilian population that sort of understands and is a little bit sympathetic to their cause. And they still use this population to spread their messaging. They spread their messaging in Hausa. They spread their messaging in Kanuri. Kanuri is also a very popular Nigerian language in the northeast of Nigeria. And this is where they influence young people to tell them, come and join us. We are harmless. We give you all the resources you need. The state cannot give you jobs. The state cannot give you resources. There's no Nigerian bank that you walk into that can give you a loan, not to talk of an interest-free loan. And we're giving you all of that. So why shouldn't you join us? So why would I spend 6 years or 5 years in the university and I will go submit my certificate to Boko Haram and they burn it?
But so just if you could give me quick so I can move to Jency. I somehow do find there has to be more. Me not having a job is not an incentive enough for me to start killing people and slitting their throats and gouging their eyes out. I mean, that's a huge distance to cover. I mean, if I don't have a job, you could maybe convince me to steal or cheat or rob a bank. But to convince me to make a living of just killing people, I'm not sure just not having a job is enough. There has to be something more.
I think before I make you my friend, I have to appeal to you, right? Right. So they don't come and tell you we're going to start with slitting your throat and all that. These are the little incentives. I think it comes with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. When I've given you loan, I bought you over. When I give you a wife, I bought you over. At that point, you're already a member. Then gradually you become, Boko Haram makes you a commander if you can kill 15 members of your family. You become a commander. So that means you have arms, that means you have money, that means you have access to certain things. So clearly, they first appeal to their sentiments and win them over. And when they win you over, you really cannot pull out. Once you're in, you're in.
Right. Now, Jency, you were giving me some examples of fake news and the frequency with which it's used. And in Kashmir alone, in the last 2 days, you've had to fight some, not fight, but fact check some 13 cases. Give me, we've met before on different panels. How far have we come as far as it being used is concerned? How far ahead are the robbers compared to you, the police, who's calling out their fake news? The last time we met, Photoshop and other such technologies were the cutting edge. Now you have deep fake where you can have audio, video, the works. The frequency of its use and the tools to fight it.
Thanks, Abhinandan, and good evening, everyone. So as I was mentioning, since the last 48 hours, I was just checking with my team how many stories have we done or how many videos and images have we debunked. So in the last 48 hours, we've debunked about 14 such pieces of misinformation, which has emanated after the government announced the end, scrapping the special status to Jammu and Kashmir. It's 14 stories. Now, this is just a sample. I'm not saying that these are the only universe of stories that are out there. There may be much more. I mean, might be 5 times, 10 times more than that. But what we've been managed to pick up are about 14 stories which we checked. And I was just looking at the sample of these stories to see whether is it like one side trying to propagate more misinformation than the other. And you would be pleasantly surprised to know, or rather, I don't know whether that pleasantly surprised is the right term to use, but it's 50% each. It's atrocities against Muslims, old images and videos that are being used saying that Muslims are being killed, which has no connection with the image and the video that are being shared online. Whether it is saying that Indo-US military exercises happening right now jointly after the announcement was made, again some old video that has been picked up, then some Kashmiri policeman's funeral which happened many months back, that is being shared as atrocity against Muslims in Kashmir. Then various these kind of stories are being projected, where both sides are trying to in that war of trying to build a narrative. They both are trying to share images and videos. Either some of them may be doing it without having an understanding of what that image or that video is, but many of them do share despite knowing that it is not true. So there's this active war which is being waged online, and which is why I was not very clear when I was looking at this topic, insurgent ideologies. What is this insurgent ideologies that we're talking about? It's not about external. Unfortunately, whenever we talk about misinformation, everyone's reference point is what Russia did, or probably has allegedly been said to have done during the US elections in 2015-16. That's the reference point that everyone has. But I've always been saying this even ahead of the elections, that we don't need a country from outside to come and do anything within this, within India. We have a large online population. Many of them either unemployed, or they feel that it's their job to actually to correct some historical wrong, or it's their job to actually build a narrative for a political party. Many of them paid, not many of them unpaid. But there is a large online army available there who are sharing videos, images, and some of them are probably as educated as all of us in this room are. The classic case being that, and I've mentioned this on many panels, there's a corporate CEO who once shared something which was not true, and we did a story and we told him online saying that, so the image and the video that you shared is not true, and he said, I don't choose, I'm exercising my choice not to believe you. Now what do you do with that? So whenever people say that, it's the uneducated people, it's the TikTok generation, it's the millennials who are sharing it, or the people who have got easy access to data in the last 2.5, 3 years post Geo came and started killing everyone in the market, that's when fake news is spreading. I don't agree with that. It's people like you and me who choose not to believe even when you are presented the evidence and said, listen, this is what it is, this story has been covered in the past, this image or video that you've shared is not true. So there is an active war which is happening online. Just
but if you could just comment also, Jency, on this entire, malevolent actors acting to build distrust between governments and its citizens, is it really grey, the kind of fake news that you bust? Who benefits from it? How often do you link it back to, people who are directly a part of political parties, of political ideologies, or are they just some, Kuka or Mogambo sitting somewhere wanting to, make the citizens hate their government? Or is it this big mesh within? I mean, have you got some?
I guess it's a mix of both. So many people have asked me that after the elections, has fake news gone down, or has the incidence of fake news gone down? I would say it's not gone down, but yes, there is a slight blip. The only reason being that all those people who have created those pages on Facebook and are building up that huge follower army on Twitter, they are keeping quiet for some time because they wait for events like these where they can again get active. Now, when I said that in the last 48 hours we've done about 14 stories, all those 14 stories have been done thanks to all those pages we've been monitoring. We have not, we are constantly looking at those pages even now. So they build up a huge follower army on Facebook, and then they keep quiet for some time when there is no election, when there is no immediate provocation to put out something, and then they get active the moment there is a national event which is happening where again that narrative has to be built. So yes, fake news will never end in my view. It might actually, there will be a certain reduction that you may see over a period of time. And Abhinandan, as I was telling you, in the last 3 years, there are only 2 prominent cases, one from the BJP side and one from the Congress side, I mean to say the supporters, where you've seen that they have been picked up by the police and cases have been filed against them. There are only 2 prominent cases I remember. There may be smaller cases here and there, which actually Rema can confirm to us. But otherwise, there are only 2 prominent cases, which shows that both those cases have happened when the government of that state, belong to the other party. And when you have, when you don't have any fear, and with impunity you can go and keep, making websites and sharing stories which are false, and you feel that the government is not going to act against you, you'll see these cases of only increasing.
Yeah, let me come to you with that, Rema, understanding that you are a serving police officer and you're bound by the rules of the services, and there's just this much you can comment on. Even so, you can only act on the instruction or under the supervision of the government that you're reporting to. Now, when you talk about certain mob lynchings happen, certain incidents happen where people get out. So there are 2 aspects to it. One is, while I understand technology plays a role, but it's just like when the printing press was invented, and if we read back then, all the religious conservatives were saying that, oh, now this is going to spread all sorts of evil, satanic thoughts across. But net, I think the printing press was a good thing. I mean, I'd say good books still get sold more than bad books, and no Chetan Bhagat jokes, please. But it's true. They do. So is it just a tech thing, or should we take it as an inevitability that this technology does a lot of good? Like I said, with the police and citizen interaction, at least for me, I think that is way better. So there's no point, expecting platforms to create something, and I'm going to come to that a little later in a little more detail. And the second thing is that how difficult is it for you to act in times where there are elections happening? Because any action of yours could lead to the media picking it up, and we'll come to the media's role and making a big deal of something that you may genuinely doing out of the best interest of what's happening. So could you just give me the separation, but first on the tech?
Sure. I will start by answering the question you and Jency were discussing a while ago about who are these people and who is the one who gets benefit out of the whole thing by spreading lies or by spreading falsehood and fake news. Well, it's been 2 years since we've been closely studying this issue, and we have gone through numerous cases, by profiling the criminal and also the victim. The criminal who spreads it and the victim who gets killed or who gets attacked in the process. Well, until very recently, I mean, to be very honest, until 2017, even I was of the opinion that, this is being done by somebody who is from outside, somebody who has a vested interest or a group of people who have something to gain out of it. But the way it is moving, the way the fake news epidemic is moving forward in India right now, we can fairly say that everybody, literally every other person is a victim, or rather, he's a peddler of fake news, knowing so well that he is spreading it, and he doesn't want to admit that, this is not this is not the truth. But you go up to them and you tell them that, this is not right. Please stop spreading it. I've seen it among my own family members, especially especially during the Kerala floods that happened last year. There was a huge amount of fake news being spread in Kerala. I would call my mother and I used to tell her, please mom, don't spread these things. It's like, but everybody is talking about it. I'm sure there is some truth in it. So I'm talking about, educated bunch. So the answer to that question is that yes, it's you and me. It's a social problem now. It is not a tech problem alone. It's a social problem which needs a collective, social response. Now, coming to the question on whether tech is good, right? On the one side, tech is, giving us with a lot of trouble, and it is being hijacked by antisocial elements to create violence. And on the other hand, it is good for, police officers like us, because it's a great tool for us to connect with the community. So when the mob lynching incident, the series of mob lynchings happened in my state, the way we were countering it was not just by reaching out to the community, but also by pushing in lots of content through these platforms, especially WhatsApp and the Facebook pages, where somebody would post a picture of a child being dismembered, or cutting the child, it's limbs being spread out on a floor, and there is a message which says that there is a child lifting gang and they are going to come and get your children. Then we come up with our own videos and images, and we share these images in the same platforms. And to a great extent, it was quite helpful for us.
So
and Twitter...
You've been a police officer for 10 years now. So the internet penetration has grown rapidly,
Yes.
from 2009 to now.
Yes.
I mean, I understand this is not a big data set and we don't have like the, all India figures. But just from your experiences in all the places you've served, is there any relationship between the penetration of the internet and incidents of violence going up?
Well, yes.
There
I have
is?
to admit, yes, it is. I'll give you an example from my own experience. In 2018, I was posted in a place called Jogalamba Gadwal district, one of the most backward districts in the state of Telangana. The literacy rate is only 49%. So in the month of March, when my field police officers told me about this, social media rumors and how it was creating unrest in the communities, when we started reaching out to the people to understand the root cause of the issue, I was shocked to know that every household had a smartphone and everybody had access to internet. A person who cannot read and write, I'm repeating, a person who cannot read and write had a smartphone, and he was on WhatsApp, he was on Facebook. Every day he would open YouTube and watch videos. All he had to do was just, forward it. You don't really apply, there is no question of rationality, having a role there. So then we realized the importance of, imparting digital literacy and teaching people self-regulation. That's how my campaign started. We started the intensive educated campaign to go around the communities to teach people that please don't forward these messages.
And how do you know if it's working or not? I mean, how do you judge if you're getting through to the people that
just by looking at the number of incidents, like 2 months ago you had 10, now you have 0. So it definitely had come down.
Yes.
There is an impact, because until we reached out to the people and told them that this is fake, this is not correct, they didn't know. They believed that it was true, because everybody is talking about, every village WhatsApp group is talking about it. Everybody is having a feeling that, yes, there is a criminal gang out there, because the amount of, the virality, that
Sure,
is why,
yeah.
we keep talking about platform accountability, because virality is beyond my control. I can't do anything about
Actually,
it.
I'll come to the platform accountability last before we go to questions and answers, but I just want to come to Mercy. Of course, we have the tech platforms, the police, and other institutions that are good, bad, compromised or not. But let's talk about the institution that you belong to, which is the news media. There is enough evidence to suggest that it does put out information that is often incorrect, very often not balanced, and I'm including, digital platforms, satellite platforms. To what extent is the news media, A, a part of the problem, and B, a part of the solution in giving misinformation, which is a slightly broader term than fake news?
I think within the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, with the proliferation of social media, there's a lot of self-check, in-house auditing that media organizations have been doing. Sometimes I'm interviewing you and I'm sort of live tweeting it, and someone is replying me, "Where's your source?" I'm like, dude, I'm live tweeting this guy, So it shows you that citizens are very aware, and they are also checking everything that we do and we say. That's on one hand. On the other hand, however, the state is also involved in giving us fake news, right? So when you look at sources, they say my source is likely probably a government representative, a victim, eyewitness. So if I'm filing a story, those are the 3 people I'm looking at. Those are the major actors. Those are the major stakeholders. But I've had a case where 200 girls were kidnapped by Boko Haram. That's even before, after Chibok. You know, Chibok is a very nationally global one. And the Nigerian military came out and said, we've rescued all the 200 girls. But guess what? No girl was rescued. And everybody was running helter-skelter. And my bosses kept calling, who has been rescued? But, I mean, at that point, lots of media organizations...
Did the journalists not ask for evidence as they're supposed to?
That's on the other hand. She is with the police. Ask her. If I call her to confirm something and she tells me it has been done, the natural instinct before the era of questioning the credibility of the media would have gone to the press to publish it. She is the police, right? So she's the first responder to whatever has happened. The Nigerian military was the first responder. So issuing me a statement and say, Mercy, we have rescued 200 girls, was a natural instinct for me to report to the media, and to the readers and the viewers. And when I did that, I'm already on the front lines, because at that point, some parents were saying, no, we have not seen our daughters. And in this situation, I had to hold myself back and said, the only credible source at this point is a parent. A parent wouldn't lie about the status of their children. The Nigerian military can lie. Even an eyewitness can lie if the eyewitness has been cajoled. So we've had cases where the state itself is a peddler of fake news. It's easy to accuse the media. It's easy to say, oh, the failing New York Times. With exception, I'm not calling anybody's name. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say, you know, to make accusations and to accuse us. And I mean, nobody has been, this era has been the most challenging for any media organization. Because at every point of filing a story, you're questioning your credibility. That is why even when I call her, she's with the police, she's a police spokesperson, and she tells me this and this has happened. I don't run to the press. I try to re-verify her information. Right. But 10 years before now, I run to the press to publish. Because she has a chance of trying to make her, not you directly, of trying to make the police look good and say, oh, well, this is going on this way. So yes, the state actors are also peddlers of fake news. But the citizens are also peddlers of fake news. I'm not disputing that. During the last elections, the president of Nigeria, who at some point dealt with terrible illness, was said he has been cloned. As a matter of fact, people believe that the Nigerian president was cloned. And I'm like, how can you clone a human being and replicate the person back to the presidential villa? And guess what? My mom called me and said, the guy's cloned. I'm like, Mommy, are you okay? How can you believe? She said, don't argue. I'm not voting that guy. He's cloned. My mom believed it. I mean, my mom believed it. She's educated. So a lot of people believed it. The president had to come out and say, this is the real me. I mean, that's naturally what a cloned person would have said anyway. I'm not saying he's cloned. You know, he had to come out to say, I'm the real guy. I'm not being cloned. So that was one of the biggest fake news that we had to deal with as a country during the last election. So yes, the citizen is also at fault. The media is at fault, clearly. And the biggest, I think at some point, the biggest peddler is also the state actor.
Yeah, so that clearly, I think, Jency, if you could come in here, while of course, you know, citizens are individuals and they are not represented by a collective entity, I mean, unless you're talking about the government represents them, but that's in a different context. But in this context, the organization with the most resources is the government in any country in the world. For any change to happen, if the government wants it to happen, it'll happen fastest. You know, civil society and consultations is all very good, but we have seen in several cases, whether it's the passage of a bill, whether it is wanting something to be done, the government can do it like that. You have been fighting fake news, and you have often been accused of being partisan while fighting fake news by political outfits. Do you think there is a tendency of governments around the world now, because they have understood the power of fake news, to not want to use this as a platform? I mean, if you go to a country, and I give this example, you know, wherever I'm on any panel, and you go to Singapore and they have this video before a film starts, and what to do in case there's a terrorist attack by Al-Qaeda and all. So first response is, dude, Singapore, no one's attacking, relax. But the second response is, that's how they use the captive audience of 2 minutes before a cinema. Here, how are the first 2 minutes before you start to film used? You stand up and sing. I mean, just think about it. And those 2 minutes, if the state wants, they make it compulsory, run a video of not believing fake news. So what I'm asking is there any incentive for the strongest institutions, whether it is news outfits, which could be partisan or not, or political outfits, to want to battle this at all? Is it a priority anywhere in the world or here?
I'm not sure whether the goal that probably journalists and fact checkers and probably people like us who are keen to see misinformation being stamped out of our online ecosystem, the government will always share the same enthusiasm. Now, hear me out before you all pounce on me. So why I feel like that is because the government in itself, what is the government? The government is also a bunch of people who belong to a political party. And it's in their interest every 5 years or whatever the term is in any part of the world to actually ensure that there is a certain narrative that is being built and there is an army of people out there who are willing to go and do the job for them in terms of building that narrative. Now, many people might say that building narrative is not wrong. That's right. There's nothing wrong in building narrative. I mean, fake news or misinformation didn't come up in the last 5 years. It's been there for decades and centuries maybe. But what we are seeing right now is that there is an entire army of people online who owe allegiance to one political party or the other, being used probably not directly, but in an indirect fashion to actually propagate that narrative. So when we say that, why is the government not acting against fake news? Frankly speaking, I don't know whether as a journalist, I would be very keen on going down the Singapore model. Because the Singapore model of, stamping out fake news actually borders on stamping out free speech.
No, but I'm not wrong with, of course, I was talking about using that 2 minutes. I mean, they were doing it to tell you how to escape. So I'm just saying there are many platforms that the government has to send a message. That's just one.
Yes, they can do that. In fact, I'm surprised at why the government, despite the kind of misinformation and the debate that has been happening around fake news over the last 2.5 years, have not really come out with a proper policy where they can take this this digital literacy to a mass level, to school students. That's something that we've been trying to do. Rema has been trying to do in her district, and I know of another IAS officer in Kerala who's doing it on his own accord. No one told him to do it. He's doing it because he felt that this is something that needs to be addressed. Where is the government in that? Why have they not come out with a policy where they will say that, digital literacy and as far as the battle against misinformation, some form should be part of school curriculum. When we've been doing these workshops in schools in Bombay in a very small manner, you should see the kind of enthusiasm those children have to understand. When they see the tools that everyone can use, even a small child can use to find out before they share it on any of their social media platforms, there is that kind of liberation that you can see on their own faces, and they come and they say that, is there another tool that we can use? These tools are available, they're free. Fact checkers like us don't have the money to employ paid tools, so we use free tools and they're available there. But yes, Abhinandan, to answer your question, the government doesn't seem to be too keen on pushing this as part of an organized strategy, because at the end of the day, it will also come back to bite the political party in power, whether it's the BJP right now or maybe some other party later on. All of them have vested interest in it, and that's been our experience.
Okay, I'm going to go for questions for the panel, but before that, I just want to put one more thing out there. As far as these digital platforms are concerned, I've always, and if anyone has an answer to this or a comment, I'm happy to listen. And I always wondered, in an era where we expect the market to find solutions, whether it is price discovery or allocation of resources, a consumer's choice is absolute and can destroy a product or a company and create another one. I always wonder why that same logic doesn't apply to platforms. And if someone can articulate that, I could copy that when I'm elsewhere. That if we are expecting so much from platforms, you do this, the platform can say, I am not obliged to provide free speech. I think the whole definition of free speech is I should be allowed to say what I want without going to prison. But no one has to be forced to put it on their platform. I can't force a channel or anyone. You have to listen to what I have to say. Just the police or the state should not send me to prison for what I'm saying. In that environment, I just wonder why we assume that the market can't also take care of that and we want the government to come in. Just a question. I mean, I don't have an answer, but yeah, go ahead. Let's start with the gentleman there, and just a request, keep it short. We have 16 and a half minutes, so let's try to pack in about 8 or 9, yeah.
Thank you, Abhinandan. I'll try and be as quick as I can. Jency, you kept repeating old friend of mine, kept repeating the phrase, both sides. I'm not sure that there are only two sides. And he said that there is an active war online. I think much of the problem also lies in terms of fake news, that people like attention. This ties in with what Abhinandan said at the end. I think the problem is also with the way platforms have built technology. They want to keep you there on that page, and there are very frightening reports that one has read out from Silicon Valley. For example, number of likes you get or followers you get on Twitter and so on. What do you do to get them? The same thing goes with YouTube or WhatsApp, messages. So people may not have an agenda behind the fake news. They're just putting it out because they want to get attention. Yeah. So yes, there is a problem with it, and yes, I think technology plays a very important role. The reason why government is not doing it, as you pointed out, is because the government is interested. So I'm coming to the nub of the issue, according to me, is one of trust. When the mainstream media and the government are indulging in what you might call mass propaganda, if not fake news, isn't that essentially fake news? And then if we as consumers are going to continue to watch that, and then you want to give them TRP points and get advertising revenue into it, you have a whole insidious cycle which encourages this mindlessness, which leads to all sorts of problems. So I do appreciate that, as Rema pointed out in her presentation about how even illiterate people are watching YouTube. I completely agree. It's so much easier to watch the YouTube message, or for that matter, even read on WhatsApp some history, supposed history of India or any other place, and simply forward it. You don't have to check anything, but the message is spread. That violence or whatever message that is coded into it is gone. I do think, yes, it's extremely difficult to stop it, and I agree with you, Jency, that fake news will never go away, therefore. But there are two things I think that we can do, and we must try. That is transparency. There must be transparency in governance, and there must be transparency in the media, every kind of media. You can't have a government today that says journalists are not allowed to come into the finance ministry. I mean, that's not transparency. This is going to encourage another kind of approach to news and information. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that eloquent piece. I agree with you on a lot of things. Just one bit I want to clarify is that I don't think propaganda and fake news is the same thing. And I'll tell you why, and I think at least I make a very conscious effort to separate the two. I don't think you can grudge a government or a political thought, propaganda, as long as it's spin. For example, when you go to report a story, I can choose to do the story I want, and that will show the situation in one way or the other, as long as the facts are all accurate. I would not put that in the same category as fake news. And that is key. And I understand that a narrative gets built, but it's very it's very dangerous if we club both into one basket. Yeah, please go ahead.
Just a quick clarification that nor do I intend to say that mass propaganda and fake news are one and the same. They're not. But I'm saying we're living in the age where propaganda is being pushed to such an extreme that virtually it's like fake news. While you may have the right to propagate your ideas, when you manipulate information, it may be accurate information, but if you manipulate information in the selection of the information you want to put out to get a certain kind of agenda out, it will amount to fake news willy-nilly, because everyone else will think they're doing the same thing.
Okay. The gentleman there? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for providing your insight on what is actually a very important topic. So I work with the DFR lab at the Atlantic Council, and we monitor disinformation across South Asia. And one thing that I've noticed, which is quite distressing to me, is how relatively unsophisticated pieces of misinformation can still travel really far. So a simple doctored video or image can gain a lot of attention and convince a lot of people. So my question would be, A, have you witnessed any more advanced forms of disinformation? So for example, deepfakes is something that we are paying a lot of attention to at the moment, where artificial intelligence technology allows us to make videos which are extremely sophisticated, and the methods of detecting them are still not as advanced. So, A, have you witnessed any pieces of very advanced disinformation? B, do we currently have the capacity to deal with and prevent this kind of disinformation? And C, do you think that this is going to play a bigger role as we go forward? Thank you.
Can I take?
Yeah.
So that's a very good question. As far as deep fakes are concerned, it's something that is bothering all of us. Each one of us in the newsroom, we are always worried about the fact that when we have figured out how to look at cheap fakes. That's something that we always say that in India, it's not so much of a problem of deep fakes; it's a problem of cheap fakes. So you can actually have string together, put out a Arvind Kejriwal video where he's saying something. You can slow down the video and say that he's drunk and he's slurring. And that goes viral. And most of the people who I've seen sharing that video, they do know that it's not right, but they get a lot of fun in sharing that. Now, as far as deep fakes are concerned, I think globally, fact checkers, a couple of months back, I was at a global conference, everyone is talking about it. And I don't think anyone has arrived at a solution to it. There are a lot of researchers and tech companies who are actually looking at how you can identify deep fake videos. So there is work still going on there. I'm afraid to say this, as far as Indian fact checkers are concerned, we still don't have a final solution for that. But coming back to the other point about videos being shared and your distress is exactly right there. Many of the videos that we debunk or which we bust, when we are looking at it and we are looking at 500 shares and 1,000 shares and 2,000 people sharing it, we often wonder, why are people sharing this? What is it that is so difficult for you to understand that it is not right? And which is why we feel that as we are talking about the kind of that we are all caught in that in that echo chamber where we want to share something which is so close to our political ideology. And there people don't really bother to say that whether it is right or not. In fact, many times when we point out that it is not true, people come back to us and say, oh, so what, but isn't the larger idea behind what that post is all about, isn't that true? So now how can you battle that? In fact, yes, it's you're right. I'm really surprised why people share that, but at the end of the day, that's the truth.
Actually, when we talk about state actors, Boris Johnson had said in an interview some time back when he wrote a report as a journalist was completely untrue on the regulatory framework of the EU. And when he was asked during an interview that this report is false, you made a false claim, he said, yeah, but the larger battle I'm fighting for is right, so this is okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
Thing like fake news, it's a new term for something that has been going on for centuries. In the old strategic term, it's called deception. If you look at Daily Mail, the founder at the turn of the century, early 20th century, the Lord something or other, I forgot his title or name, he said Daily Mail was going to whip up a good amount of hate among the British population towards the colonies. And in the 1860s or 70s, when 2/3 of the Burmese territories were already annexed into the British India, a lot of London newspapers, this was way before the time of technology or broadcast or otherwise, were running stories about the last Burmese king, portraying him as this wife beater, abusive monarch, a drunkard, caricaturing. So I have absolutely no love for any type of feudal the kingdoms, including my own ancestral kingdom in Burma. So what makes it so extremely powerful with the fake news today is the technology.
Absolutely.
In the 1990s, when many of you would remember, AOL was first made commercially available. AOL was the first one, unless you're part of any university research lab. The email was not available until early 1990s. And the Chinese dissidents in US and some of us from Burma and our supporters, we were the first to use the internet for what we consider social justice causes. And in the 1992-93, I built the internet-based, what is called Free Burma campaign. We exploded within a few months. Yeah? And so from then on, we reach a point where Cambridge Analytica could sway the elections in favor of this, essentially a fascist presidency in the United States. And so I think at this point, Facebook, in the context of Burma or other places, some of us call this hate book, not Facebook, hate book. It's extremely powerful. You turn 50 million Burmese public in a span of 5 years against a population that they did not know exist a few years ago.
Right. So, do you want to comment on news has always had bits that were fake? Why is it such a big deal now? Why is fake news a thing now and it was not a thing earlier?
I think he captured it succinctly. The former president of Nigerian Governor General Nnamdi Azikiwe, there was a time he was reported dead. This was more than 40, 50 years ago. And then, we don't have the pluralization of the internet as we do not have now. What is different now is that we have technology that enables it. So technology now sort of serves as the microphone and the megaphone of some of this information. If I say something in this room, the chances are that probably just a few of us will get that information. But now I have the capacity. There's one of my videos that I do presidential debates in my country during elections. And there's one of the videos that got millions of views. And I kept asking myself, how come this video was so powerful? People in the rural areas watched it. Almost everybody in my country had access to that video. But I have not seen a traditional media in my country with that level of power. Traditional media organizations these days are now forcing themselves into social media, into the internet, just so they can get the kind of hits that regular citizens have. I have the power that I can turn myself to a media house without tying myself to anybody like you were, because I have followers on Twitter, I have followers on Facebook, I have followers on YouTube, and if I decide to create a video out of this event now and I say, I want millions of people to see that, millions of people will see that. So each and every one of us is a media house at the moment. But 20 years ago, that wasn't the issue, that wasn't the situation, because then we also had gatekeepers, professional gatekeepers, that sort of serve, number one, either serve the interest of the state, serve the interest of the media owner. In my country, for instance, most media owners then were political elites with interest. So if I am reporting for your newspaper, for instance, and I write a particular story, the editor hits the story until it fits the narrative of the owner. But right now, all I need to do is just tweet. I'm done. So that's the kind of power we all have. But with that power comes responsibility. That's why I always insist that if traditional media folks say, I don't want to get involved with social media, the people that are there are not professional, the people that are there are parading fake news, guess what? We're handing over the power to be able to be responsible to irresponsible people. So it's much more better for journalists that are the first witnesses to crisis, to situations, that understand the codes and the ethics of the profession, to take charge of this space and not leave it out. I respect the fact that we're all citizen journalists, but I also think that professional journalists that have been trained, that understand the 5 Ws and the 1 H, that understand that if I spread a particular information, it has a capacity of burning down this building. It has a capacity of burning down this country. That level of responsibility, if we all take it to the internet space, it helps us. Because I have had cases where a professor in the Nigerian university sends out WhatsApp videos that are all false. And I sent him a message, I said, why are you sending? They say, oh, well, I'm sending as received. I'm like, send as received is not responsibility. Responsibility is when you get it, you look at it, and you realize that this information has a capacity to not just destroy, it has a capacity to kill, and kill innocent people. Kill mothers, kill children, kill people in villages, in rural and in urban areas. And in my country, there's something I would say that is a major fault line. I mean, I'm from a country of 250 languages. In my village, I'm sure that if I cross from one street to another, I don't understand the other language. So when you have diverse groups, and you have Muslim population and Christian population almost at par, 50-50, when you play around in such countries, the capacity to run into a civil war is higher. Right. So if we do not try to ensure that we grow up with a generation of responsible citizens that online, and we let them go and say, you know what, I just don't want to be a part of that space. So at every professional group, it's important that we all not just become media owners as the fact that we have Facebook pages and handles. We take it as such that every information that we churn out there, someone is likely to get killed. And people have been killed in millions.
Right. Thank you, Mercy. We're out of time. We just have 30 seconds. So I'd like to use those 30 seconds to thank the panel and thank you, audience. And I don't know what change these kind of panels can bring about. But the one thing that Mercy did say, I would urge all of you that whenever you get a WhatsApp message that you know is fake, a lot of times we ignore it. But ever since someone like her once advised me, if you're a part of a group, post it there, even if that means embarrassing your aunt, uncle, cousin. That's actually not true, so it's best you don't share stuff. And I think if enough of us start doing it, it may be a small step towards a more responsible WhatsApp user. Yeah. Thank you, panel. Thank you, audience.
Thank you.